So today's webinar is occupancy segmentation and pre-planned task prioritization. And our speakers today will be Deputy Chief Eric Kramer from Addison Fire Protection District and FlowMSP CEO Jason Marvel and FlowMSP CFO Kevin Bizard. And let's get started.
Thanks, Joy. Appreciate you getting this set up and the introduction. I'm going to kick this off just, Chief, asking you some baseline questions about the Addison Fire Protection District. How many structures do you have where you're considering a pre-plan or have a pre-plan? How many do you do inspections for? How many individuals on the department are tasked with performing functions for either gathering information or inspecting the location? If you can, just give us a backdrop of the department.
Okay, I know I'm trying to get my numbers straight because thankfully that Jason did not give me the heads up on the type of questions he was going to ask me prior to this. So I know you're just trying to make me sweat and while this is in recording, and I can't probably tell you some things that I probably want to tell you right now. But anyway, right. We have Addison Fire District, just the western suburb of Chicago, kind of southwest corner of O'Hare Airport, roughly. We have 3 stations, cover roughly 11, 12 square miles. We have a little over 1,000 some odd locations, which equals to be almost 3,000 occupancies. And under the 3,000 occupancies are what we are the inspectable occupancies, roughly. So in our bureau is fairly small. We have 1 fire marshal and 2 inspectors, and trying to prioritize the inspection schedule and the type of occupancy that they're going to be able to get in and inspect. Like everybody says, they try to get in every place, all of your occupancies once a year, which is very tough for us to even accomplish. So we're trying to figure out how to prioritize the type of inspection and where. And then we have a couple of guys per shift that actually have the inspector or the can't think of the word. But anyway, they can go in and actually do the pre-plan inside of Flow. So when we do building tours, we have shift members that are actually putting information into our pre-plan software. And that's kind of where we are today. Did I get them all, or what else did I miss?
You did, Chief. The second question that I have is, from a software technology perspective, if you can confirm you're using ImageTrend on the records management and inspection side of the world, and then also on the pre-fire planning side, you're using FlowMSP, obviously, for your pre-fire plans. Is that right? Do I have the kind of the details around that right?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay. Well, from here, I think I have the backdrop from the fire department's perspective. Our goal at FlowMSP is to provide an enablement set of capabilities to help Chief Kramer take an occupancy record and provide Flow with that occupancy record so we can start to do our work as it's related to using capabilities such as machine learning and artificial intelligence to risk classify locations on behalf of the Addison Fire Department, and then use our dashboard that's embedded within our pre-fire planning application to then take those segmented locations and assign them to particular people within the department so that they can put their eyes on the worst first within the community. And what we want to do is show you today 2 parts of the process. The first is the necessary part of extracting the records management file out of ImageTrend. And then Kevin Bizard, the CFO for FlowMSP, is going to review the risk classification and segmentation model, as well as the dashboard that then takes the occupancies that Chief Kramer has given to us and really puts them to work. So as you can see, the agenda here is as follows. So, all right, do we want to hand the, do we want to hand this over to back to you, Joy, to talk about the rest of the export.
Sure. So as Jason was saying, we're just going to quickly go through how to get the data out of ImageTrend, and then what Flow does with it once you give it to us, and how that provides value to the department for the segmentation and the prioritization process so that you can get your worst ones done first.
And so, Chief, you're going to show us from ImageTrend how to extract the business name, the roof type, the construction type, sprinkler system. You're going to, in essence, dump us that file that's included within the inspections module. Is that correct? Or is it within the occupancy module within ImageTrend?
It's within the location module is where we get most of our data for this particular information.
Fantastic.
All right. So if you could go ahead and share your screen, Chief Kramer, and just kind of walk us through the steps of how to do that.
Okay. So bear with me here. You got mine up?
Yep.
So not to insult anybody's intelligence on here, because probably a lot of people know how to work Report Writer, but I wanted to just break this down into the more entry level of how to pull data out of your ImageTrend product. So we use Report Writer. Everybody in here probably used it once or twice. So in here, I'm going to create a transactional report, locations. And then the good thing about this stuff is it's all keyword search. So it's kind of nice to start typing in what you're looking for. So bear with me as I type. I start pulling in the full address. All right, now we break into, we're going to go roof type. So if you notice, a lot of this stuff is supplemental questions. So it wasn't like pre-canned data that we got out of ImageTrend. It was stuff that we built in the background as we were building out our locations and occupancies. So as maybe more information becomes available or more detailed stuff that we're not necessarily collecting, we can build it out in the background to pull data that we need to be more accurate at what we're reporting.
Chief Kramer, how do you decide which data to include in this report you're creating?
This came out from your guys' report that you sent me from that AI about looking at the roof types and the roof hazards and stuff like that. So I kind of just mapped out what I have to what you guys had and try to put those two together to see if I'm getting the correct data. And I think of this group that we're putting together right now was probably the most information that was beneficial for you guys as well. So lat and long. All right, and that was pretty much about it. So we just hit generate. Oh, and of course, why am I not working? Oh, you know why? Sorry, my bad. I got to do something different here. You don't have to do this.
And Chief, I believe that you're the administrator for a larger group of ImageTrend departments. And so here you're just selecting that you want the data limited to the Addison Fire Protection District. But in reality, any admin that has access to multiple departments could theoretically export this information for a large number of departments at once and have FlowMSP do this analysis in one go for several different departments.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the downsides that I always forget to do. Every time I build a report, I got to run it, and then we have 21 agencies total in our license. So it tries to pull that data out of 21 different agencies. And that's just what I don't need. So that's why nobody else really has to put that criteria in unless you own that license software and you have a bunch of agencies in the same system. Otherwise, if you're in our system, you have rights just to your data. So you don't have to put that filter type in there. But once you get your data, you can verify the information that you're pulling. And then really you just kind of go up to your actions down to export, and you can export it into a CSV file. Depending on how large your file is, and it just kind of throws it right on the bottom, and you could drag and drop this file into your email and just email it right out to Kevin.
Perfect.
Thanks, Chief.
And so, Joy, if we could get the presentation back up. We are going to pull a little bit of a Food Network, Julia Childs kind of reveal here. So we've already had Chief pull this data for us once before. And so what we'll be showing in a second is what that file looks like when you open that .csv file that Chief just exported when it comes over to Flow. So the first thing, if we go to the next page, is the information is going to look something like this. It's really a representative of that table that you saw on Chief's screen. And you can see that it's limited to those fields that he had selected. In reality, you can add as many fields as you would want here, and we can give you insights into whatever information that you provide us. One of the first things to notice here is this information is not very easy to understand. And one of the challenges with RMS, and that a lot of people in the fire service face with RMS, is access and understanding what data you have, what data you're missing. And as you can see, there's a bunch of blanks here. There's some kind of formatting differences throughout some of these. And so step one of what we do with your data is just try to understand where we're at. What do we have and where are we today? So if we go to the next page, you can see what that initial output or analysis might include. So in this example, we've summarized that Chief had provided us with about 2,300 different entries out of his ImageTrend. And you can see first the percent complete that we're highlighting from some of those various roof characteristics that he pulled. As I think I've mentioned previously, while maybe talking about Addison, 30% plus is actually quite strong availability compared to a lot of departments that we see throughout the country. We see a lot of RMS files, and 30% is actually more complete than many that we do see. So the first thing that we'll do with this initial data review is just understand what data is missing. The second is it provides an opportunity to maybe do some cleanup, and we will be able to send you this information back and highlight, hey, Chief, you've got 7 entries in here where you don't have a street address. And that might highlight as a reason to go back, revisit that information and clean it up. We've also identified that there was a duplicated entry, which might be a reason to revisit one of those locations to see why do we maybe have different information regarding the same location in here. We also can identify various oddities or inconsistencies. And so here we had noticed that 325 South Addison, their sprinkler system was a no, yes. And maybe that's not going to be helpful enough for that first responder in understanding what's actually there. So another opportunity to highlight where some of the data might be able to be cleaned up. As mentioned earlier, this is just a representation of what we can do with the fields provided in this one case. But if you are interested in including additional fields from ImageTrend into this, we can provide the exact same type of insights into all of that information. But even once we do this, it still leaves a department with a fairly daunting task. You've got about 1,400 locations here that are missing roof types, right? So where do I even start? Which gets into the second step of our work that Flow will do with these files, which is the initial risk analysis. So if we go to the next page, our initial risk analysis is focusing on aerial imagery and artificial intelligence, specifically looking at roof condition as well as lot debris. These are two very good indicators of overall building condition and risk. If owners are not keeping their lot clear of debris and they are allowing their roof condition to deteriorate, that is likely going to be a potential indicator of what might be expected when you arrive on scene and actually enter that building. So we are really using this as a way to highlight what properties should receive the highest level of prioritization and immediate attention. And we do this by combining this type of roof condition with the lot debris and bringing that into a matrix, which is shown right here. So as you can see, we've taken the various buckets of property roof condition and lot debris, where we've defined any lot that has more than 1,000 square feet of identified debris from the artificial intelligence as high debris, 100 to 1,000 square feet as medium debris, and less than 100 square feet as low debris. We then are able to create this matrix to see where is there overlap between these two indicators and identify those properties that score poorly in both of those indicators. So here you can see that there's 58 structures that had both severe roof condition, which means that there are significant issues with the roof based off of the aerial imagery, and high lot debris. When we start looking at the various combinations, we've arrived at these kind of 6 buckets as our definition of high hazard locations. So any roof or any property with a severe roof, regardless of the debris, should be one that receives extra special attention. Poor roofs, we're going to focus more on those that have the higher debris, and then the fair roof conditions, we're only going to focus immediately on those with the highest lot debris. What this does is it gets the information that we previously reviewed, which right now actually in Addison's case in FlowMSP, there's approximately 4,000 locations, and we've been able to highlight 11% of those, or about 400, to as the most likely high hazard locations. So when going through the dashboard and planning out where they're going to spend their time, the Addison team can focus on these properties that are most likely to be the ones that need the most attention. So how do we then combine this insight into an execution plan for you? So we've attempted to make execution as easy as possible for our fire department customers. So the first step of that is the segmentation. With the manpower shortages, it is almost impossible to visit every single structure. So being able to prioritize which ones you are visiting first is going to be very important. Once you've prioritized those, it is important, A, to be able to easily see those, and B, understand what needs to be done to fulfill your pre-planning needs for those high hazard locations, which is where the dashboard comes in. We are able to mark every single one of these high hazard locations that we've identified as a high hazard in the FlowMSP dashboard, which would then allow you to sort your locations by only those high hazards. Using the FlowMSP pre-plan completion percentage, as shown in the middle here, you can then see whether or not it is building data that is missing from those locations, annotated images, or any other parts of the pre-plan that might be missing to completely pre-plan those high hazard locations. Then taking this one step farther, good pre-plans are only as good as your ability to use them. So rather than locking this valuable information in a RMS or other sort of database, we want to be able to deliver that information to first responders when they need it, which comes into our concept of dream dispatch and some exciting work that we are doing on the response side. Most near term, in the next week or so, there's going to be a new addition to the web application, which allows people to enter in text when clicking the high hazard field. So recently, there has been the addition of the high hazard field in the FlowMSP app. It's a checkbox. Going forward, when you select that checkbox, you'll also be able to input any of these high hazards, which in this case might be the high lot debris or the poor roof condition, but also maybe there's previous knowledge from the department that this is a frequent flyer EMS location. Maybe there's a hoarder, maybe there's an aggressive dog, and any of that relevant information can also be inputted into that high hazard text field. Well, what does that help with? When you get a dispatch to any of these locations marked as high hazard, right next to your CAD messaging, you're going to see a big old orange logo that says high hazard with the information that you put into that high hazard text field delivered right next to it. So now, not only am I seeing the information from CAD, but I'm seeing that very specific risk that I highlighted as the highest hazard that I want my first in responders seeing right away. And that's going to be delivered right alongside that dispatch. That doesn't change that all responders would have access to the more detailed pre-plan, but our focus here is delivering that most critical piece of information to those first responders so they don't even have to necessarily access a pre-plan when they're the first one arriving on scene. I'm going to pause there, see if Chief or Jason or anybody else from the Flow team had anything to add before opening it up to questions. You're on mute, Jason. You are still on mute.
Okay, somebody had to unmute me. Thank you. All right. Chief, from a departmental perspective, when it comes to prioritization, what's happening in the department that's forcing fire departments to become more efficient? Is call volume increasing at the Addison Fire Department on a year-over-year basis?
It is.
Okay. So do you see a state or a scenario where Addison's going to have to make these decisions about how much time that gets allocated or chunked out to these various locations based on the risk classification?
That's kind of the direction that we're kind of going, because in my organization, it's right now currently not feasible for me to get into every one of these locations once a year. Like, I can't do that. So we're going to go and err on the side of the higher the hazard the building, I'm going to make sure that we're in there at least once a year, maybe even more, and then kind of tier that inspectable occupancy based on that hazard, because I'm going to go after the safety of the members of the Addison Fire District versus going into the lowest hazard building that I got to do once a year. But I got to lean on the higher risk because I can't get into every building once a year, if that makes sense.
It does to me. And Chief, when we did the initial stratification and reviewed 10 of the locations, I think we found some of those locations to have high lot debris. There were some Connex boxes that we were then able to open up. I think it's an interesting idea to say that lot debris and the quality of the roof or the state of the roof at the time you do the analysis is a good proxy, as Kevin has said, for what's potentially going on inside that structure as well. So if you have a business owner that's not taking care of the roof and they're not taking care of the lot and the debris on the lot, it's likely that you're going to run into some risks, or potentially likely that you're going to run into some risks in that location as well. So that's why we really like the the use of these flags as a way to draw attention to the worst first.
I think the places that we went in and checked, the lot debris on the outside equal the lot debris on the inside. So, however it looks outside is how it's going to look inside. So it is, or let's just say, the higher percentage of time, that's exactly what it's going to be on the inside. So that seemed to pan out almost in every building that we looked at.
You bet. And then from a data perspective, we are also working on the concept of returning a file from an analysis perspective. So Kevin talked about checking the high hazard box within the FlowMSP application on those structures that scored poorly. But Kevin, do you want to talk about some potential ways that we can return a pre-filled set of data or transfer data from, say, the FlowMSP application, where if Chief Kramer is assigned resources in the field to go finish collecting information that's been identified as missing in ImageTrend, can FlowMSP assign those resources, get that information collected in Flow, and then return a file that Chief could potentially load into ImageTrend? Do you see that as a next step for us?
I do. One of our main goals is to make the access to your data as easy as possible, which with the dashboard allows now people to export all of their pre-plan information and data alongside directly from the web application. And when we do that, we will also be giving people unique building IDs, which is basically your North Star that this information belongs to this property. And we actually are able to store RMS provider IDs right next to the FlowMSP IDs, which means that anytime information is coming out of any of the RMS providers, as long as we are consistent with how we're exporting that information and the IDs there, that information becomes much easier for Flow to update, send out, import, export, et cetera. One of the biggest challenges with data is lots of times that consistency again, right? So by being consistent with our management and kind of getting it set up in a strong place to start, it makes the ongoing maintenance of that much easier. Also, one of the things is we will help departments transfer data from RMS into FlowMSP. And as Chief Kramer showed you, he had selected some custom Addison Fire Protection District fields from that information, which means that all of the different roof types that Chief Kramer's team has been collecting may not match up exactly with the roof types that are in FlowMSP system. Well, what we'll do is our team is happy to help map that information over into Flow. We try to avoid the department by department, I guess, customization within our platform because of the cleanliness that allows data to be used on an aggregate basis. And through just some, email exchanges, maybe a couple calls, we'd be able to get on the phone with you and say, here's all the different roof types that you've got. Here's how we would propose that we map them into Flow. And we could actually do a bulk import of all of your existing RMS data into FlowMSP directly into the FlowMSP fields, which I know a lot of people have appreciated from the ability to avoid double data entry.
You bet. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate that. The goal here is to create the efficiencies and to use the best tool set available in the industry to ensure that consistency. So thanks for that overview. Okay, so Joy, I think that concludes the presentation from how do you get the data out of ImageTrend? What do we do with it from an analytics scrubbing, segmentation, and then assignment methodology on the Flow side? What I think we can do is turn it over in case anybody has any questions. But Joy, do you want to talk about what we're going to do with this video so that the participants who maybe want to rewatch it or send it around within their department? What are we going to do with the content?
Sure. So we will have a link available to share with anyone who wants it. So if you could just shoot us an email and let us know that you would like a copy of this recording, we'll be happy to share that with you.
Great, thanks.
And if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and type it in the chat and we'll be happy to answer those at this time.
One of the things I want to expand upon is the maintenance and the management of this data. I know Kevin brought this up, but some of the main questions that some of my guys are asking is like, so if we go to a structure and it's a hoarder situation and they mark it as a high risk facility, you know, how do we follow up with that? How do we, you know, keep an eye on how many of those hoarder situations we have marked in town, depending on whether or not somebody sees that it's not a hoarder situation and then goes back and edits that high risk button. But it's nice with the new administration tool of Flow in the background where I can sort out those high risk buildings and look and see why they're high risk. Then I can prioritize, hey, we need to follow up and make sure these are still high risk and kind of clean up that data. So it was just something else I wanted to expand upon.
Thanks, Chief.